Part 7 ran the chain. Once, one question, read, think, build, write, review in a single unbroken motion. But the exam does not ask for one motion, it asks for 20 back to back as the hand tires, as the clock bleeds, as panic waits for the first sign of falling behind. So part 7 proved you can run the chain, but part 8 asks the harder question. Can you run it 20 times inside 3 hours and still be standing at the end? This is not new theory. There is no part 9 waiting. This is the whole machine switched on under load. So 6 parts built the layers. Part 7 fused them on one question. But part 8 runs them across a paper. That is 20 questions, 3 hours. That is the arc. This is where it closes the chain and the two new disciplines. Per question, you run the chain, read, think, build, write, review, and 5 links. Part 7 drilled them, but a paper is not one question. So part 8 adds two disciplines that only exist when there are 20. That is finish, the law that a present answer beats an absent one. Repeat, the stamina to run the chain again and again when the first run has already tied you. That is the chain is per question. Finish and repeat are per paper 20 times. Hold the distinction. It is the whole of part 8. So in the part 7 we discussed about one question and one answer, how to write after reading to review. At the same time, in the part 8 we are going to discuss total paper, that 20 questions it consists, and that 3 hours time. So the paper on the table, this is the real GS paper to 2025 paper. 20 question it consists, 10 question carries 10 marks and 10 question carries 15 marks. 250 marks, that is 3 hours time for this paper. We will not write 20 answers here. That is not what a simulation is. A simulation shows the decisions what the disciplined hand does at each turn of the clock. The answers you have already learned to build. What remains is to run them in the right order at the right speed to finish. Till 7 part, till part 7 in the answer writing and execution series, we discussed so far till 7 from how to get marks and what to get marks till how to complete one question in 10 minutes, that is carrying 15 marks. But in the part 8 we are discussing much more than one question. It is, we are discussing total one paper which is consists of 20 questions. So one caution, the same as always, how I sort this paper is mine. A question strong for me may be hard for you. Please watch the method, not the labels. So from starting, we are going to take minute 0 to minute 2. Do not write, sort it. The pen stays down here at this point of time. Read all 20 questions. Sort them into 3 piles: strong, manageable, and hard. Classify them into 3. Comes to strong part. Written fast these questions because the structure appears the moment you read them. On this paper, for a prepared hand, the questions: the Attorney General's responsibilities, the amending powers limitations, the Collegium's evolution, the President's pardon, India and the USA, center state financial relations, corrupt practices under the RPA. These questions are strongest questions for most of the people. So this should be written each question under 5 to 6 minutes. So remaining amount of time you can use in manageable questions as well as hard flagged questions. So next set of questions are, after the strongest questions you have written, then we are moving to manageable questions. These questions are familiar but needing shape, like administrative tribunals and the 2021 reform questions, the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly after 2019, constitutional morality, environmental pressure groups, the NCPCR in the digital era. These questions in the GS2 paper 2025 question we discussed under the manageable section. These questions are familiar but needing the shape of the structure. So that is why these are allocating under manageable section. So then comes to the final section, that is hard section. The ones that make you pause: women's social capital, the bias in e-governance design, civil society as anti-state or non-state, the India-Africa digital partnership, waning globalization and sovereign nationalism, the paradox of poverty, decentralization and development models, energy security in foreign policy, UN reform and the East-West confrontation. 2 minutes, no ink spilled, but the paper is now a map, not a wall. So as far as this 0 to 2 minute time, after reading the question, we are after seeing the question paper in 2 minutes, we are going to sort it out. Sort it out the question paper. You have to classify them under strong section, under manageable section, under hard section. In the strong section, you have to write the questions, those questions in the first instances. Then comes to manageable part. After this strong question, you are going to and you are going to write manageable section of the questions. And then in the last section, you are going to write hard section questions. So if you allocate like this way, the time is suffice. The 180 minutes you are going to utilize. So that is why read all 20. The paper becomes a map, not a wall. So that is why this type of classification we are going to do in the first 2 minutes of the question paper. So minute number 2 to minute number 9. 90. That is the next step. This is the first half. In the first half, what you have to do is bank the strong. So begin with the questions you can execute most confidently. Not because they come first on the page, but because marks banked early cannot be lost late. One caution as you reorder, keep the booklet clean. Number every answer clearly. A strong answer in the wrong place or a question accidentally skipped can cost more than it saved. So the questions you marked strongest, go down first. They are where you recover time, written in 5 or 6 minutes, because you decided their structure at the moment you read them in minute one. So this is the answer to the cruel arithmetic. The paper needs 200 minutes actually. It gives you 180 minutes given by the UPSC. So missing 20 are part back here on the questions you know cold, written in 5 minutes instead of 8. So what I am trying to tell you is, when you are going to write the questions in the strongest section, you have to written under 5 or 6 minutes, because you know the structure of the particular answer of that question. So you may be written in 5 to 6 minutes. Let's we take 10 minutes for each question. The 200 minutes will roughly allocate total paper, because 20 questions into 10 minutes. But 8 minutes is suffice for 10 marker questions, and 10 minutes will suffice for 15 marker questions. But in the strongest section, you may get to know 6 to 8 questions. That questions you will write in 5 to 6 minutes. So the time remaining in that strongest section you can utilize in manageable section, and as well hard section. So that is the arithmetic you have to be very careful and manageable. And the manageable ones comes to the manageables one section. Once the rhythm allows, the tribunals, Jammu and Kashmir, constitutional morality, these questions, by the halfway point, you should be close to your planned pace. Whatever pace you set for yourself, given your strengths and your hand, you have to look at the clock. If you are on pace, hold it. If you are significantly behind, adjust now. Not in the final 15 minutes, behind a little, behind by a little, corrected early is nothing, behind by a lot, discovered late is lost the paper. So in this section, what I am trying to say is, we are taking 2 to 90 minutes section, 2 to 90 minutes. This is the first half. So in this first half, you have to complete at least 10 questions. You have to complete at least 10 questions. If the 10 questions you completed, next 10 questions you have to complete with the same pace. But you little behind the questions, you have to adjust the time, adjust the pace remaining 90 minutes. So that is why after 90 minutes, you have to check the clock again. That is why I am telling you this thing. So after the 90 minutes, you can do another 10 questions. That is the way you have to conclude the questions. Then a calm hand writes, one more thing you have to remember, a calm hand writes faster than a frightened one. The banked marks are what keep them hand calm. So this is all regarding first 90 minutes of the examination. In the first 90 minutes, what you have to do is you have to complete at least 10 questions. You bank the some marks in your pocket. So remaining 90 minutes, you have to complete it remaining questions. So in that way, you have to complete the paper easily. So next one we are going to discuss minute number 90 to minute number 160. This is called as the second half. The questions that needed thought. These questions are thoughtful. Now the hard pile this is the ones you flagged and did not touch. Like these questions, women's social capital, the paradox of poverty, energy security and foreign policy, UN reform, sovereign nationalism, e-governance design, civil society, India, Africa, and decentralization. These questions you have to write in this next 90 to 160 minutes. So these are thoughtful questions, slower, more careful. These needed thinking, and now you give them the thinking they needed, but never more than the question is worth. Each question you can give 10 minutes each, not more than that. No more. The moment over one overruns, you are borrowing from a question not yet written. So each question you have to allocate time 10 minutes, 90 to 160 minutes in the category of 90 to 160 minutes category. 10 minutes each, not more than that. If you spent more than 10 minutes, you overruns, you borrowing from a question not yet written. So this is where discipline is hardest. A hard question tempts you to keep going. One more point and one more line. Resist. The 11th mark on this answer costs you 7 on answer still blank. So minute number 160 to 180. In the minute number 90 to 160, what you have to do is, again I'm repeating, slower, more careful, but never more than the question is worth. Because each question you have to allocate 10 minutes each, not more than that. So that is why you have to be very careful in this 90 to 160 minutes. Then comes to the 160 minute to 180 minute. This is called as the completion window. The completion window. This is pens down. This phase you have to pens down on perfection. This is the finish. The first of the two paper disciplines. Scan the paper. Is anything blank? Is anything half written? The hardest 15 marker, the UN reform question. Perhaps then the one you could not fully crack. Does not get abandoned the question. It gets a skeleton. Introduction, 3 points, a one line close, 4 minutes, 7 or 8 marks, where a blank scores 0. A skeleton is not a weak answer, it is a rescued one. Two blanks turned to two skeletons is 15 marks. That would have been nothing. So the student beside you wrote 16 beautiful answers and ran out of the clock. You wrote 20 present ones, you win. Not because you knew more, but because you refused to leave marks on the table when the map breaks. Repeat under pressure. So what I am trying to say in this section, in 162 to 180 minute, you have to do something review part. You have to scan the paper from first question to 20 question. If any question you have to, you can leave it or blank it or half written answer, you go and write the answer. At least the skeleton you have to write, because if you blank the question, you got 0 marks. If you write a skeleton with 3 lines, with 3 points, introduction, a 1 line closure, just 4 minutes, you got 7 to 8 marks. But a blank answer, you got 0 marks. So that is why you gone back to first question to till 20th question. You scan the paper and you can write half half hard question, haphazard writing, and you have to complete the paper with at least skeletons, because a skeleton is not a weak answer, it is a rescued one, because two blanks turned to two skeletons is 15 marks, that would have been nothing. So the student beside you wrote 16 beautiful answers and ran out of clock. That is not get good marks. That won't get good marks. You wrote 20 present ones. You win, not because you knew more, but because you refused to leave marks on the paper or on the table. When the map breaks, repeat under pressure. The plan assumes, the plan holds. It will not. Suppose it is past the halfway point and you are well short of where you mean to be. This is where repeat is tested. Not the comfortable repeat of a paper going to plan, but the repeat that must continue when the run is already going wrong. So do not panic, right? Do not abandon the clock. Triage. The questions you know, skeleton plus speed, introduction, four sharp points, and a closure. Faster than you full pace. Faster than your full pace, because you are already behind it. What you plan the time, you assume the plan, but you behind the time. So that is why you will write faster than your full pace. The questions you do not, skeleton only. 3 points, pull 7 marks from zero. You will not write 10 perfect answers in the time that remains. You are never going to. You will write 10 present ones. Present beats absent every single time. The heart that kept, the hand that keeps writing full essays finishes 14. The hand that triages finishes 20. The second hand wins. What the simulation showed. Step back from the clock and see what just happened. You did not write the paper top to bottom. You wrote the strengths first. Fast banking, time and calm. And let the paper's hardest corners wait for the time you had, not the time you wished for. You ran the chain 20 times. So that is what I am telling you is, after 90 minutes, you lacking the questions what you assumes. But in the next remaining half of the time, what you have to do is write skeleton of the next 10 questions or anything remaining the questions, skeletons, 3 to 4 sharp points, and close with the conclusion. In that way, you have to fight with the paper, with the triage. A person complete 14 questions with beautiful answers, got X marks. But a person complete 20 questions with good answers, got Y marks. So Y marks is greater than X marks in this perfect scenario. So that is why you have to use this type of method to crack good marks. So that is why you don't left the single question blank. You have to attempt, you have to write all questions, you have to finish the paper at least with the skeleton, the introduction, 3 to 4 sharp points, and one conclusion. So that is what I am trying to say in this paragraph. So you run the chain 20 times. Each run was part 7. Read, think, build, write, review. But across the paper, two larger disciplines held it together. That is finish, which turn every blank into a skeleton, because no question should be blank in the examination. Every blank into a skeleton which turned to be. Then repeat, which kept the chain running even when the map broke. The assume your preparation broke. No, no problem. No new skill appeared today. The chain was part 7's. The clock was part 6's. The judgment, the structure, the thinking, the architecture, the reading, all of them from the parts before. So part 8 invented nothing. It only switched the whole machine on and let it run under load of 20 questions, 3 hours, finished. So what is the chain here? 20 runs of read, think, build, write, and review. That is we discussed in the part 7. The chain is how to write one question in the 10 minutes for 15 markers, in 8 minutes more or less for the 10 marker questions. So comes to the clock, 3 hours paced fast where you can, careful where you must. That is we discussed in the part 6. So because in the 180 minutes you have to complete 20 questions with review, with the planning. If you back behind the what you actually assumes the time, then only you have to do is next questions in the aftermath, skeletons, introduction, 4 3 to 4 sharp points, and one conclusion. You have to turn all questions into that skeletons rather than blank. You don't have to left blank. Turned every blank into a skeleton. That is the only finished thing. Repeat, kept the chain running even when the map also broke. So you have to write. You wrote your strengths first, banking time and calm, and let the hardest corners wait for the time you had, not the time you wished for. The whole autopsy complete 8 parts. This is the last part. You learn to read a demand, the architect a response, to think before the pen, to structure as you write, to enrich with judgment, to hold the clock, to fuse all 6 on one live question. And now to sustain that fusion across a whole paper to the finish. Under 3 hours, that were always 20 minutes too short. That was the test. Till now, we completed 8 parts. This is the last part. From part number 1 to part number 8, we discussed few things. In the part number 1, we read the demand of the question. After the part number After part number 1, in the part number 2, we discussed architecture of the answer after reading the question. After demand, read the question. Based on demand of the question, we have to architect the answer. In part 2, we discussed. In the part 3, before write, what you have to think, what you have to retrieve, what you have to select, what you have to prioritize, we discussed in the part 3 of the answer writing. In the part 4, we discussed about the structure of the page, structure of the answer, like how to write introduction, how to open with the introduction, and how to write body, and in the body what you have to fulfill the purpose, and conclusion what you have to write meaningful conclusion, meaningful ending, meaningful opening from introduction to conclude with meaningful conclusion. That was discussed in part 4. Comes to the part 5th, we enrich with judgment, using illustration, using visualization, using evidence. With that 3, data, examples, diagrams, wherever fits, wherever lift the answer, we discussed in this enrich with judgment part number 5. Wherever it use, wherever did not use, wherever it is lift the answer, wherever it is decoration. So that is all the things for an answer we discussed in the 5th part. In the 6th part, we discussed hold the clock, word limit, pace the time, how to write within the word limits, how to write against the clock. These are discussed in the 6th part. Comes to the 7th part, we have discussed how to write a question in the 10 minutes. In the 0 to 2 minutes, we have to think. In third minute, we have to write introduction. In remaining 5 minutes, up to 8 minutes, we have to write body. Then we have to write in the 1 minute conclusion. Then remaining 2 minutes, we have to review the answer what we written so far. So this is all things discussed in the 7th part. Comes to the 8th part, we discussed all 20 questions. In the 7th part, we discussed only single question. In the 8th part, we discussed total 20 questions. In the 3 hours, how to write. In the first 2 minutes, what you have to do. Then 2 to 90 minutes, what you have to write. After 90 minutes to 160 minutes, what you have to write. And 160 to 180 minutes, what you have to do. You have to sort the paper, strongest, manageable, and hard questions. Then 90 to 0 to 2 to 90 minutes, what you have to do. How many questions you have to write. And then after 90 to 160 minutes, how many questions you have to write. After 160 to 180 minutes, you have to scan the paper and you have to written where left the question with skeletons. So this is all regarding answer writing. From demand of the understand the demand of the question, create the architecture of the answer, think before the pen, retrieve, select, prioritize, then structure on the page, introduction, body, and conclusion, then enrich with the judgment, data, examples, diagrams, flow charts, then how to write against the clock within the stipulated time and within the word limit within the pace of the time, and then how to write question under 10 minutes comes to the 15 markers question, and then and finally how to write a full paper which consists of 20 questions that carries 250 marks in 3 hours. In this way we have discussed from answer writing and structural autopsy of answer writing and execution for 2026 from part 1 to part 8 discussed comprehensively. So the autopsy is complete. Nothing remains to dissect. What remains is yours to do. Sit the paper, run the chain, bang the strong. Think the hard. Finish everyone. Do it once and it is a struggle. Then do it 20 times and it becomes the hand. Do it until the 8 parts are no longer 8 things you remember, but one thing you are, that is the exam. Do it until the 8 parts are no longer 8 things you remember, but one thing you are, that is the exam. That is the answer. That is the end of the autopsy. So, this is the part 8 paper we discussed so far based on the particular paper, that is GS paper 2025, GS paper second from 2025. In these questions we discussed so far, all questions from 1 to 20 from that particular paper only. If you are any doubts, you have to take that paper and you have to check from first question to 20th question, and then you have to again and again you have to listen this lecture with that paper. So that is the thing I have to tell you. Thank you and all the best.